Good afternoon, everyone. Please take your seats and welcome to the Glendale Housing Authority meeting of October 27th, 2009. May we have the roll call, please?
Authority members Draymond.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Mincy.
Here.
Parazian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Najarian.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the October 27th, 2009 regular meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, October 22nd, 2009 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And what's the next item?
Approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
To abstain from those minutes due to my absence.
Probably. So.
Okay. If Mr. Quintero's abstention would be recorded also, the minutes will be approved as submitted. Next item, please.
At 5 is oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the Housing Authority may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the Executive Director for investigation and report.
I have one card from Herbert Milano.
Thank you very much. Chair Najarian, members of the Housing Authority, my name is Herbert Milano. As you know, for quite a few years now, I have been promoting two major issues for the City of Glendale. One of them is the strategic plan, and the other one is a report on the results of the quality of life indicators, which you will see next week. What I'd like to present to you today is a PowerPoint from 2001 that highlights those two issues as I presented them many times before here in the City Council and the Housing Authority. So if I may. Sorry. Okay, what we have before you is a report that was initiated by the city manager in his office in coordination with the Parks Department, the Housing Authority, and the Police Department. And it is one of the most comprehensive and best reports that I have seen the city prepared. What happens is that once a report is presented to the City Council after all these studies, I sometimes wonder what is the follow-up, whether this report is incorporated into the overall city's strategic plan. Because if it were, then you would have periodic reports on how the city approaches issues that are presented on a report of this magnitude. So if I could have the lights, I can probably show you this a little bit more clearly. So as you notice, it's a community development, the library, parks, and the police department. And look at the objectives that you have here, which is really to coordinate all of the youth services overall for the city. So coordination was one of the key objectives here. I'm going to take you to number 4 here, where we have some basic statistics. In 1990, the youth population was 12%. When this report was taken, the increase was fairly substantial to 22% of the overall population. Now, you also notice at the very bottom it says that 49% of the Glendale Unified School students qualify for a federal free reduced lunch program. And that's primarily in southern Glendale where the need is the greatest. So it tells you a little bit about the economic situation of a lot of families in southern Glendale. I'm going to go to 6. The community development block grant in South Glendale residents was, we actually had a survey by CDBG on those needs, and there was a report made in 1999 that I'm assuming was being considered here. And here is the youth and families do not have a single convenient source of information about youth activities and services, regardless of who is providing the service. Again, the coordination problem is a significant one. Facilities. There's an insufficient supply and inequitable distribution of facilities for youth and families. There aren't enough jobs, youth jobs available, and youth are not being adequately prepared for employment. Now, this was at a period where there was actually substantially more employment than there is now. There's actually a couple of others having to do with the issues having to do with that deal with the police, primarily issues with domestic violence, and the lack of low-cost transportation. Let's see. And here on slide 17, you actually see how the calculation was made with regard to the total expenses attributable or assigned towards youth in Glendale. And at that time, when you add up all of the proportionate costs assigned to youth, it is $4.7 million, so it was $4.7 million back then, which was less than 1% of the overall city budget and roughly about 2.4% of the general fund. Here it is. You got your enterprise and miscellaneous funds, you got other government services, and $4.8 million on youth services. And this has roughly been the history of Glendale for a very, very long time. And here's the city roles: to promote the importance of youth, identify the youth needs, coordinate community efforts, refer families and youth to services, and so on. And since I'm running out of time, I'll finish it up. And the next steps are council feedbacks and bring the youth strategy report back for council consideration. So what I found now is that all of these reports, all of these objectives were never truly incorporated into an overall strategic plan. And so even though the best intentions are brought forward, when there is no action take place, we have a significant need of the community that remains unmet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other cards for public comment? None. Okay, I'm going to close oral communications. Item 6, please.
At 6A is Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services and Acting Director of Community Development and Housing regarding current status of Glendale's Homeless Continuum of Care and recommendation to approve 2009 Homeless Continuum of Care NOFA application to HUD. At 6A1 is motion approving the 2009 Continuum of Care program priorities and authorizing the City Manager, Executive Director to submit an application to HUD for funding and execute all necessary documents with HUD and sub-recipients related to the 2009 application.
Thank you, Mr. Starber.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll go to Jess Duran, Acting Director of Community Development and Housing, for the staff report. Jess.
Thank you, Mr. Starberg. Chairman Najarian and members of the Housing Authority of the City of Glendale. Staff is recommending approval of the 2009 Continuum of Care program priorities and notice of funding availability application on behalf of the Glendale Homeless Coalition and authorization to submit the application to HUD and execute all necessary documents. The funding application, as you noted in the report, totals $2,383,000 and consists primarily of renewal funding of 11 existing programs and additional funding for one new project in the amount of $167,000, which would be for the addition of 3 units for shelter plus care housing vouchers for chronic homeless. The city has been applying for and receiving federal Continuum of Care homeless assistance funding through the supportive housing program since the inception of the program in 1995. The city is fortunate to be one of only 4 other cities in the county of Los Angeles that operates its own Continuum of Care and is eligible to receive its funds directly from HUD. The other 3 cities are, of course, the City of Los Angeles, Pasadena, and Long Beach, which means that all of the other communities participating in the in the supportive housing program fall under the jurisdiction of the Los Angeles Housing Services Authority, or commonly known as LAHSA. Since the release of the NOFA, staff has been working with the Glendale Homeless Coalition service providers to complete project renewal funding applications to incorporate into the Glendale Continuum's consolidated application, which is led by the City of Glendale. The proposed projects, and you have a list of the projects, the funding amounts, and the sponsors of each project that's part of our consolidated application in your report. But they include 3 transitional housing projects, 3 permanent supportive housing projects, 3 shelter plus care housing voucher projects, 1 homeless management information system project, 1 supportive services only program operated by PATH, which is the largest of our programs and one child care program operated by New Horizons at the New Horizons Child Development Center. So the city partners with 6 agencies to implement the various projects under the city's continuum of care, including the Housing Authority, Path Achieve Glendale, Path Ventures, which is another subsidiary of the Path Parent Organization, Door of Hope, which is our newest service provider who took over the Hamilton Court program, the Salvation Army, and New Horizons. As a result of match requirements under the SHP program, the agencies do contribute approximately $600,000 of their own funds towards the SHP projects. And last year, under our Continuum of Care program in Glendale, we served 1,885 duplicated persons with with street outreach, emergency services, prevention, and counseling programs, in addition to providing 131 transitional and permanent housing units for families and their chronic homeless. As part of the application to submit to HUD, the city is required to identify program priorities. So the 2009 program priorities that have been identified include 1, new permanent supportive housing, such as shelter plus care vouchers for persons who meet the definition of chronic homeless. So chronic homelessness is HUD's #1 priority, and so it's the priority that we've adopted. Second priority is renewal of existing projects which have demonstrated effectiveness in the continuum of care. And the third priority is renewal of shelter plus care rental voucher projects, which again have demonstrated effectiveness in our continuum of care. As I indicated before, there is a list of the projects in your report with the funding amounts for each project and the name of the sponsor. So it's our annual funding application that we submit to HUD for our homeless continuum of care program. And if you have questions or would like more details on any part of the program, Yvette Sanvelian, the city's homeless coordinator, would be available to answer questions.
Thank you. I do have one request to speak. Mr. Weaver?
Question first. Chronic homelessness. Are those the individuals the type that I've occasionally talked to you about or something, and you always come back and say, well, there are some that do not want help. They want to stay on the street. Are those what you call the chronic homeless? And if it is, what can you do about somebody that doesn't want to get help?
Yes, Housing Authority member Weaver, those would be the chronic homeless. They are those individuals that are the most service resistant, and the best approach that we can take is basically not to give up on them and perform street outreach, go to them over and over and over and over again until we can try to gain some trust. We're attempting to do that. We've set a goal to try to help a chronic homeless individual kind of camping out at Fremont Park, and we think we're starting to make headway, and that's what it takes, just a constant barrage of communicating until they decide.
A lot of the one major component then is the trust factor. One major component then is the trust factor.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a card from Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon, members of the Housing Authority. My name is Herbert Molano. I want to at least give you a heads up for the possibility that some of the numbers having to do with homelessness will appear at next week's release of the Quality of Life Indicators. In my personal experience from my apartment building nearby, I've had the occasion to find homeless individuals sometimes going to the subterranean parking area and remain there overnight, causing us some concern in various different ways, and for the tenants as well. I've taken some interest. I participated in some of the meetings of the Homeless Coalition to try to understand this problem further. As I looked at your report, I was wondering if there could be an executive summary be made that includes the gap, meaning the gap of the population that is not being attended to. I'm particularly interested in finding out what the gap is of the homeless families, in other words, families or mothers with children who find themselves without lodging at any one point in time in Glendale and who are not being served. These reports tell us what the actual service numbers are. You know, we service so many of these from this agency, or we service these others. But what it doesn't really tell us in an executive summary is what is the gap that is not being attended to, and what are the resources necessary that the city would need in order to attend to those who are being underserved. And my recommendation is that maybe a different summary, you know, giving you a summary of the totals by the type of individuals that you have out there, and specifically the issues with regard to families. Now, years ago, in the 1970s, when we still had mental health facilities throughout California, there were many individuals who are now homeless and walking on the streets who were at those facilities. But ever since we did away with a lot of the mental health facilities in California, many of those individuals who are chronically homeless are more than likely having significant mental problems. And you also find the issue of those who are addicted to various different types of substances, which makes the problem a lot harder in order to try to resolve, you know, and make any headway. But I think that a report like this, in a summary format, should be part of your yearly report and perhaps form part of the quality of life indicators to see if we're making any progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions, Mr. Duran? Okay. If not, this is a motion.
I'd like to move 6A1.
And with no other discussion, then, we'll take roll.
Authority members Draymond. Friedman.
Yes.
Mincy.
Yes.
Parazian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver. Chairman Najarian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Any authority member or staff comments?
Any comments? Mr. Mincy?
Yes, there were a couple of occasions since in the last couple of weeks that I haven't mentioned. One was the 30th anniversary of the very first low-income housing project that was here in Glendale. That was with Southern California Presbyterian Homes at Casa La Paloma. Several of us were at a very nice luncheon the other day to celebrate that. And I was sitting at a table with two representatives of HUD, and we were talking about how we have our housing projects near the transportation center. And he brightened up and said, "Oh yeah, that's what we want." And incidentally, he lives in Glendale. And but that was one thing, and I'm saying that because last Thursday we had a televised drawing of our third of 4 projects near the transportation center, City Lights, and this council chambers were full of people wanting to hear their number. We draw by number. And I've done several of these, but this last time, I draw the first 20. This last time, there was a lady in the audience, that was her number, and she yelled and jumped up. She was already ready to come up here, and I said, "You can sit down now." But it was kind of nice to see the reaction. Everybody else applauded. But the need is so great. We're doing the best we can. We have a lot of things going on. It'll never satisfy everything. I think Mr. Najarian or someone was quoted as that. I can't remember who said that. But it was just encouraging, the couple of things we had in the last 2 weeks involving advantages to those that need housing. So I thought I'd bring it up.
Thank you. That was one of my better quotes, Mr. Mincy. Seeing as Mr. Weaver said it, but I don't want to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Draymond?
Not on a different subject.
Mike.
My goodness. It's so nice to have all of my colleagues clamoring for me to be heard better.
No, it was the city attorney.
Oh, excuse me. Well, it's something to have the city attorney wanting to hear me better, too. It's just a reference to Mr. Milano's presentation. I just wanted to make it clear. I wasn't suggesting that Mr. Milano was trying to make any other point than what he was saying, but that 49% of children from this particular survey of children who would qualify for free lunch program that in the city of Glendale. That is not to say that 49% are on that program. It says that 49% would qualify, and I believe that it is not 49% that avail themselves of that. So I just wanted to make the point clear. It could be less, it could be more, but the point is 49% would qualify.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I'll take a motion,
I'll move we adjourn.
Second.
and we're adjourned.